Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I hope you are all wonderful. Today I wanted to talk to you about washing fabric and caring for garments that you've made from fabric that you've bought. And as the owner of a shop or a retail business, it's something that we get asked quite a lot is how to wash fabrics. So I wanted to tell you a bit about my own personal experiences from washing fabric, because I have made lots and lots of clothes from fabric that I have bought. So I have pre-washed a lot and I've washed a lot of garments that I've made. So I want to tell you a bit about my personal experience, but then also just generally what we kind of know as retailers and what sort of information we get on fabrics as well regarding washing. So hopefully it'll give you a little bit of guidance and some insight and just a bit of help into working out how to actually look after the fabrics that you're buying and then the garments that you make with it as well. So first of all, I wanted to talk to you about pre-washing, which I feel is like quite a big sort of important topic to kind of be aware of if you're going to be making clothes, because depending on the type of fabric, pre-washing can be more important than other times, because washing can change fabric. So when fabric is initially made and it's it's made on a loom or in the machine or wherever it's made from, and it gets woven from the fibres that it's made from, if you imagine, it's almost just in a sort of this kind of raw state of being made, and the first time it goes through that cycle of getting washed and getting wet and getting sort of manipulated around in the water with soap, the fibres of the fabric can change and the weave of the fabric can change as well. So that's why it's always important to consider pre-washing and also consider how you will look after the garment once you have actually made it. So a big factor for me personally when I'm thinking about pre-washing is I will think about how does it actually fit into my own personal laundry situation that I have at home. So I'm quite a lazy person when it comes to laundry, and I basically do a light load, a dark load and towels. And if it doesn't fit into one of those criteria, then I know I'm going to be much less likely to wear the thing I've made, because it's just more effort to wash it. So on the whole, I wash at 40 degrees. I do usually have about 4 rinses. You can set the number of rinses that it has on my machine, and I usually spin at 1200. I'm not actually sure what the unit is for that, but it ranges from 400 to 1400 in my machine, and I spin at 1200. And the cycle that I use is like a daily wash. It lasts for about an hour and a half, and that's generally like 90% of the time what I wash at. I do sometimes wash at 30 degrees as well, but on the whole I wash at 40. And then after that I usually tumble dry most things, but then there are other things that I don't tumble dry, usually like denims or anything that's got viscose in it. I don't tumble dry that. I don't tumble dry shirts either, or like cotton lawns. So it's mostly like jersey stuff. I've got Sophia, she's almost 2, so she's got like a lot of clothes, but most of hers are jersey as well, so I've got a lot of stuff to tumble dry anyway. So I'll think about how when I get a fabric, I'll think about how it's going to fit into that. So it's probably a good idea for you to do that as well. So the other factor to consider when you pre-wash is how you then dry the fabric too, and depending on what it's made from will affect how you want to dry it. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail shortly, but you want to think about whether you're going to hang it up to dry and whether that might change the fabric. So jersey, for example, if you hang it up on a sort of washing line situation, then it's going to stretch out as it dries. If it stretches out as it dries, when you come to cut it out, it will be stretched out of shape, and then when you come to make the garment, it's going to be stretched out of shape too. So for jerseys, I would always either tumble dry it if I intend to tumble dry it afterwards as well, or I would try to dry it flat. So I've got one of those clothes horses, or like clothes rails, and it's from IKEA, and it's got a flat top on it. So I would usually fold the jersey fabric and lay it flat along the top of that if I was going to be air drying it. Otherwise it just as part of the pre-wash, it would go in the tumble dryer. And then the other important thing to remember about pre-washing is ironing your fabric as well. That's the last step of pre-washing, because fabrics can come out differently in the wash, but once you iron them, it can change them, and it will obviously also make them flatter. That is what ironing does after all. And it's important when you come to cut your fabric out before you know, as the first step of making your garment, that your fabric is as flat as possible, because that will make your cutting out much more accurate. So it's important to iron it properly. Like, don't underestimate that stage of ironing. You need to have a good steam iron. Your ironing board should have a nice bit of padding on it as well, because padding will help to sort of trap heat and steam within it, and it will help to just get you a better ironing experience. I have done a separate video that was on sort of the irons that I use and the ironing board that I've got, so you can, I'll link to it below, but you can check that out. That's on my channel as well. So what I wanted to cover next was just from a retailer's point of view, so me as somebody who buys fabric from other places and then I sell it on to other people, the information that I have regarding washing fabrics. And this will vary depending on where the fabric has come from. So I have some suppliers who are a lot closer to the manufacturing of the fabric, so they have their own mills in various countries, and they just know a lot more details about the fabric. So quite often on the bolts of fabric as they come, there will be printed washing instructions there. So I've got one here as an example. And you can see on this one that it says you can machine wash it at 30 degrees. So this is a jersey, a cotton jersey. So it says you can wash it at 30 degrees. What you will also occasionally come across as well is that washing instructions can be printed on the selvage of fabric too. It tends to happen more with maybe like a specific designer of fabric. So one example is the Clark & Clark lightweight upholstery fabric that we have, and they always print their washing instructions along the selvage. So it's worth looking out for, but don't be surprised if you don't see it that often. It's not that common for it to be printed there. Then the other sort of main kind of category of fabrics that we get are fabrics that are surplus from the garment manufacturing industry. So this is when fabrics have been commissioned and made in a mill somewhere, and then they get sent to a factory where clothing is made for a high street or wherever, you know, designer. And then any surplus from that garment manufacturing process then sort of trickles its way down into the retail trade to people like me, who are then selling fabric on to individuals who are making garments for themselves. So because there's just more people involved in that process, sometimes the information doesn't always filter through. So quite often for those kind of fabrics, our suppliers, where we get the fabric from, they don't even know the sort of official washing instructions. So, you know, majority of the time we do actually know what the fibre composition is. Sometimes we don't always know the percentage, and if we don't know the percentage, it's because our supplier doesn't know the exact percentage, but you know the mix. You know, it was like, you know, cotton spandex or cotton polyester or whatever. So in that situation, you just have to use your best judgment to think, okay, what is this fabric made from? What is it likely to do when I wash it? How important is it going to be to wash it? All of that sort of thing. So as a retailer, that's the information we have. Sometimes we know and sometimes we don't. So hopefully the sort of types of fabric and how I would personally care for them and wash for them that I'm going to go through now will sort of help to give you a bit of guidance and help your judgment when you don't know the actual washing instructions. So I have made myself some notes, so if you see me glancing down, I'm just looking at my notes because I didn't want to forget anything, because I wanted to cover quite a few different types of fabric. So the first one, which is a really common one, especially if you are still kind of starting out with dressmaking or kind of early on in your dressmaking projects, because it's quite a nice easy fabric to work with and wear, and that is cotton lawn. So cotton lawn is a very lightweight cotton, and generally speaking the thread count of cotton lawn is much higher. So that means in a sort of specific little area of the cotton there's a lot of threads that have made it up, which makes it nice and fine and sort of lightweight. So when that happens, the weave is quite tight and there's a high density of number of threads that have woven the fabric. It's not really that likely to sort of significantly change when you wash it. So for that fabric, I personally would wash at 40 degrees because then I can just bung it into my normal laundry routine. I would wash it, I would air dry it, so I would hang it up over my banister or over my clothes horse to dry, and then I would give it a really good press with a steam iron afterwards. And I depending on how sort of wrinkled it's come out, I do also have like a spray. I can't think of the right word for that, you know what I mean though, just like a spray bottle thing to put water on it, because if there has got any sort of crinkles or wrinkles in it from the washing and drying process, the water will just help to relax all of that out again. So that would be what I would do for cotton lawn, and you're not really that likely to see it shrink or change that much. So in that situation you might be able to get away without washing it. I generally still do, also just because I like to have nice fresh fabric to work with, but you could probably get away with it with cotton lawn. It's not going to make a significant difference to the garment that you make. Then the next one I want to talk to you about is double gauze, cotton double gauze. And I mentioned this in my last video, which was our new fabric arrivals video, and quite a few of you mentioned that you weren't sure what cotton double gauze was. It's basically cotton that is, in the double part comes from it being 2 layers, so it's like two layers of very finely woven cotton that are sort of stuck. They're not stuck together, it's like tiny little minuscule stitches that you can hardly even see that hold them together. It does have a bit of a looser weave, so because it's got a looser weave and it therefore frays a little bit more, so it's always important to really finish off your edges on cotton gauze because it does fray, and because it is a looser weave it's more likely to possibly shrink a little bit. So I would definitely pre-wash double gauze. So I've got a double gauze here to show you, and if I sort of pick the edges of it away, you will be able to see hopefully you'll be able to see the sort of 2 layers that are there, and you can see that it is fraying as well. So you might, if you've got an overlocker, you might want, before you pre-wash it, you might want to overlock that cut edge on both sides so it doesn't fray, or you use a zigzag stitch maybe, or you could even just hem it, like turn it over and hem it, just so that in the wash it doesn't fray away. In my experience, cotton double gauze does tend to get much softer the more you sort of wash it and wear it as well. Sometimes the prints, this is just my own experience in the double gauzes that I've used, sometimes the prints that are on them can make them feel a little bit sort of like shiny, not shiny, like you just feel like they're kind of coated a bit, but once you wash them it almost just sort of softens that down a bit. So they are a lovely fabric to wash and wear, but yeah, just watch out for that looser weave and the fact that it frays a little bit more. The next one is viscoses or rayons, or those kind of sort of drapey fabrics like that. I would wash them at 30 degrees, so probably a little bit cooler, although I have accidentally, after I've made something, washed it at 40, so I've like pre-washed it, then it's just gone into my normal laundry routines that I have, and I've accidentally washed it at 40 and it's been fine. So yeah, but if you want to be sure, I would probably use a cooler wash, like a 30-degree wash. And then what can quite often happen with those fabrics, so at the moment we've got some that are viscose and linen, and what I recently pre-washed one of them, and what happened was it almost went like a little bit stiff once it came out of the machine and it was still wet. It's almost like it goes a bit crinkly, like a bit crispy, but once it dries and you iron it, it just goes back to being really soft and floaty again. So don't ever sort of panic or kind of judge what's happened to a fabric until you've dried it and you've ironed it as well, because those two parts of the pre-washing process can change a fabric too. So yeah, that's just sort of normal for that to happen with those ones. For linen, I would wash it cool again at 30 degrees, and because linen tends to be a looser weave, it can shrink as well, so definitely pre-wash that. I think you can tumble dry linen, but I personally probably wouldn't. I would just air dry it on my banister or on my clothes horse, and then definitely like good iron, like lots of steam, squirt the water spray thing on it as well to get it nice and flat, get all the wrinkles out. So that's linen. Then for denim, now there can be quite a wide variation in denim because there's just lots of different types of denim and weights and that sort of thing. One thing I will say about denim is that denim will fade. That is just what happens to it. It does fade over time. Some denims will fade more than others, and from what I can tell in some research that I've done into it, it actually depends on the dyeing process that's happened when it's, you know, the fabric's initially made and it's dyed. and depending on how that has been done will depend on how well the dye has fixed to the fabric. So actually some of the things that you can do, like soaking it in salt, for example, or putting vinegar in it. I've heard of people do that as well before. Sometimes that doesn't always really do anything, because it just depends on how the fabric's been dyed in the first place. So denim is very likely to shrink, or sort of the fibres of it, or the weave of it, can kind of contract a bit as you wash it. So generally speaking, yes, it is good to pre-wash it, but because denim will sort of fade over time, and some denims can fade more than others, if you want it to be a very even fade and you want the colour to sort of just be quite solid and like saturated at the start, if it's a looser style of garment, like maybe, you know, like the Tilly and the Buttons Cleo dress, where it's not totally fitted and sculpted, if that did shrink a little bit, it's probably not going to make a huge amount of difference to it. Maybe the length, so you maybe wouldn't want to finish your hem, but what you could do is make it and then wash it, and then, you know, the wear will sort of happen more evenly, like over the pockets and where the fabric's raised in places. If you do pre-wash your denim, which I have, you know, I have done, and I do that, always make sure that you totally open it out, because as fabric comes off the bolt and it's folded, if you just stick it folded in the washing machine, sometimes you can get that faded line along where it's folded. So always make sure you totally open it out. You could, I've personally never done this, but you could put it in a laundry bag, which will just help to sort of keep the fabric kind of bunched up together a little bit more. So then if dye is getting loosened off the fabric as it's getting washed, it's sort of staying more within the fabric. Once you've made a garment out of denim, I would always wash it inside out. I always do that with all of my jeans, is wash them inside out. Again, just as the dye is sort of getting loosened from the fabric in the washing process, then it's more likely to just sort of stay within the garment rather than just kind of running away, if that makes sense. But yeah, just be aware that denim does fade, and how you sort of live with that in a way, or sort of cope with that, will depend on the garment that you've made, and yeah, what sort of look you want to go for. If you're ever not sure, you just have to pre-wash a little bit, just to, you know, get a little bit extra and just wash some and see what happens to it. So that is denim. Then the next one that is a really common one, which I wash and I wear a lot of as well, is jersey, and I touched on a bit on that in the beginning. So with jersey, jersey is always likely to shrink, very, very likely to shrink, and shrinkage can be anywhere between 10 and 15%, and that is fairly common and standard for jersey to shrink that much. So quite often patterns will always sort of overestimate a little bit of how much fabric that you need, but if you're ever concerned about it, or if you know that you want to lengthen a garment, maybe in the bodice, or if it's a dress and you want to make it a bit longer, just get a little bit extra, maybe like another 20 centimetres or something, 10 or 20 centimetres. What I've noticed quite a lot is that sometimes jersey or stretchy fabric can shrink in length. So say you buy a metre and it shrinks to like 91 centimetres, but it almost gets wider. It must just be to do with the way that the fabric's actually woven. But just be aware that can happen. Again, always sort of work out how much the shrinkage has been once you've ironed it. You want to wash it, you want to dry it flat so it doesn't get stretched out, and then you want to iron it, and then you'll be able to sort of assess any shrinkage. Sometimes fabrics can shrink again on a second one, but I've not really experienced that too much, so definitely wash it once. If you're really worried, wash it twice before you actually cut your garment out. And on the whole, I would usually wash jerseys at 40 degrees, just within my normal wash. Some jerseys do say to wash at 30, but I usually try to push it a little bit, just because, as I've been sort of saying throughout, my normal kind of laundry routine is a 40, so I try to just make things kind of fit into that. Then for woolen fabric, like say if I was going to make a coat or a skirt or something and it's got a very high wool content, or it's 100% wool, I generally wouldn't pre-wash it. So I've read around that some people will roll it up with a damp towel so that the wool gets damp and then leave it to dry. Some people will put it in the tumble dryer with a damp cloth and just sort of let the heat and the moisture get to it a little bit. But I generally don't. You could also consider dry cleaning it, but the things that I've made from like my coat that I made, my clear coat that I made, I didn't pre-wash that or sort of pre-treat it. And if I ever get it cleaned, I probably will get it dry cleaned, but quite often the dry cleaning process can sort of just change the integrity of a fabric. It can just sort of change the body of it a little bit, and it might change the colour a little bit. So I would only tend to do that if I really, really needed to. The thing you need to remember about wool is that naturally, its sort of natural properties is that it will repel smells, and it will also repel dirt as well. And that's just the natural way that wool is. So it's good to just sort of spot clean your garment if you had to, or just air it. Just hang it up to air it, or get some Febreze on it or something. So that's generally what I would do with wools. For silks or anything that's like lacy or really delicate, I would hand wash them. But as I said at the beginning, it does often mean that they don't get worn quite as much, because obviously hand washing is quite a big effort. But I usually use this stuff here, which is called Soak, and it comes in lots of really nice scents. So we stock this in the shop. You'll be able to find this online. And let me just read a little bit about it to you if you've not heard of it before. So clean all the laundry you love with this rinse-free, environmentally friendly formulation. It's perfect for washing your laciest lingerie, softest sweaters, swimwear, handmade gifts, and even baby clothes. So yeah, it is really gentle on your clothes. It smells nice, and you don't need to rinse it out as well, which is quite good. The other thing that you can use to sort of freshen clothes up a little bit, and it is also good at sort of just keeping wrinkles from forming in your clothes, is this stuff here, which is called Flatter, and again it comes in lots of nice scents. So this smooth operator leaves fabric sleek, soft and static free, plus the mild formulation is easy on sensitive skin and won't harm the environment. It's made from plant derived and renewable ingredients. It comes with a spray mist. It's biodegradable, it's phosphate free, it's dye free. So you just use a steam or dry iron at the recommended fabric settings, spray the garment evenly, repeat as needed for desired stiffness, use to freshen up fabrics between washings, or spray to reduce and help resist wrinkles. So yeah, the smell of these ones is really, really nice, so it is good to just sort of spritz and kind of freshen up your clothes too. So that kind of brings me to the end of all the things that I was going to talk about. I'm sure I've not covered everything. I mean, I could go on forever and I probably wouldn't cover everything, but if anybody does have any specific questions about anything, or you're not sure, then just leave me a comment below and I shall try to answer you the best way that I can. But I hope you found that useful, and it helps you in the future when you're trying to work out what to do with fabrics that you've bought. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, just remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss my next video. I've got lots of exciting things to share with you over the next few weeks. So yeah, take care guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!